Learning another language is not only learning different words for the same things, but learning another way to think about things. A reflective quote of Laura Lewis. Good afternoon. We are the first group to elaborate about bilingual education and the bilingual education policy in the Philippines. Beforehand, let us have a quick review what bilingualism is. Bilingualism refers to the ability of an individual to use two languages. Aside from this term, there is diglossia that refers to the use of two languages, the presence of a minority and majority language in a specific geographical area for specific purpose, audience, and context. Bilingualism is also applied in education nowadays, known as the bilingual education. Bilingual education is a form of education in which information is presented to the students in two languages. It refers to any educational system that uses more than one language. Bilingual education was developed in 1960s to describe the practice of teaching non-English speaking children in their mother tongue. Instruction occurs in the native language and a minority language with varying amounts of each language used in. There are many forms of bilingual education, and the implementation of these programs in the educational system varies significantly. Often, bilingual programs are set up to facilitate the opportunity for children to progress in their subjects. Bilingual education gives students the opportunity to learn academic skills in their native language until they have acquired enough knowledge to achieve in English too.
There are different types of bi or multilingual education. We have first the bilingual education, the submersion, two-way bilingual education, English as a second language, immersion, and the three-language system. So first, bilingual education. Bilingual education involves teaching academic content in two languages, in a native and secondary language with varying amounts of each language used in accordance with the program model. Bilingual education refers to the utilization of two languages as a means of instructions for students and considered part of the entire school curriculum, as distinct from simply teaching a second language as a subject. Bilingual education is viewed by educators as the pathway to bilingualism, which allows their learners to develop proficiency and literacy in both their mother tongue and second language. The competency in two languages is believed to broaden students' opportunities to communicate with people from other communities or revive another language. Second, we have the submersion. Submersion is the sink or swim method to learning a second language. Students who have acquired the language naturally and those learning the same language are put in the same learning environment and required to learn as much as they possibly can. This approach does not provide any structural support to learning as a second language. The student is pretty much on their own. An assumption is made that students will either fail or pass the learning acquisition model. Only one type of language is used in the classroom or in an environment where students learn, and students, however, are provided with examples of the language but are not given any kind of individual instruction in the language. An example of submersion or sink or swim method of learning a new language in a classroom setting is when the teacher uses English as the main language and not being aware that a Spanish student is in the class. The Spanish student is left to fend on their own and either quickly learn the language or fail the class. Third, we have the two-way bilingual education. The two-way bilingual education is also known as the bilingual immersion or two-way immersion. It is in dual language instruction, a developmental bilingual education. And in these programs, students receive instruction in English and another language in a classroom that is usually one half native speakers of English and one half native speakers of the target language. All students develop proficiency in both languages, and the most common targeted language is Spanish. However, some two-way programs support learning through Japanese, Korean, Cantonese, Russian, Portuguese, French, and Navajo. Two-way bilingual programs are effective in teaching languages to different groups of students and in developing academic competence in all of the students. Fourth, we have the English as a second language. English or the ESL. It refers to the English language learning in countries where English is the main or the official language and the student's own native language or their first language is not English. ESL is used in most countries colonized by Great Britain in Asia and Africa. Nigeria, Nigeria is an example of such country. The variety of English spoken and written in these countries retain the structural features of the English used in English-speaking countries, such as the US and the UK. They have unique phonological and lexical features that distinguish them as serious varieties of the English. English as a second language or ESL also refers to the foreign students studying the language in English-speaking countries, just like here in the Philippines. Fifth, we have the immersion. Language immersion or simply immersion is a technique used in bilingual language education in which two languages are used for instruction in a variety of topics, including math, science, or social studies. The languages used for instruction are referred to as the L1 or the language one or the first language and the L2 or the second language for each student, with the L1 being the student's native language or the mother tongue and L2 being the second language to be acquired through immersion programs and techniques. There are different types of language immersion that depend on the age of the new students, the class time spent in language 2 or the L2, the subjects that are taught, and the level of participation by the speakers of the language one. Although programs differ by country and context, most language immersion programs have the overall goal of promoting bilingualism between the two different sets of language speakers. And lastly, we have the three language system. As a medium of instruction, wherever possible, the medium of instruction until at least grade 5, but preferably till grade 8 and beyond. It will be the home language of the mother tongue or the local language. The three-language formula will continue to be implemented to promote multilingualism as well as promote national unity. The new National Education Policy, or the NEP, recommends that all students will learn three languages in their school under the formula, and at least two of the three languages should be native.
Several types of bilingual education program models. There are four types of bilingual education program models. First is the transitional bilingual education. Second is the two-way or dual language bilingual education. Third is the most effective form of bilingual education is a type of dual language program. And lastly, the late exit or developmental bilingual education. Transitional bilingual education is an approach to bilingual education where the children first acquire fluency in their native language before acquiring fluency in the second language. where fluency is defined as linguistic fluency as well as literacy. Transitional bilingualism is the shift from being bilingual, knowing two different languages, to only speaking one leading language. This usually happens over a period of time and can be seen within a few generations. For example, a bilingual teacher teaches children in subjects such as math, science, and social studies in their native language, so that once the transition is made to an English only classroom, the student has the knowledge necessary to compete with his peers in all other subject areas. Next, we have the two-way language or dual language bilingual education. Two-way programs provide both sets of students with ample exposure to the two languages, allowing them to progress academically in both languages and gain an appreciation of another culture. Two-way bilingual programs work toward academic, language, and effective goals. According to the literature, the two-way bilingual immersion programs are beneficial to elementary school students because these programs help them close achievement gaps, increase elementary students' academic achievement, as well as embracing their culture or a new culture. For example, a program may allocate the two languages by content, by time, or by person. Next, we have the most effective form of bilingual education is a type of dual language program. Strong forms of bilingual education, those programs emphasizing fluency in two languages, include immersion in a minority language, maintenance or heritage language programs, two-way or dual language programs, and bilingual education in two majority language in populations with two majority languages. For example, students whose primary language is Spanish would learn in English and Spanish in a one-way dual language program model. Another example would be for students whose primary language is English to learn together in Mandarin and English. Last, we have the late exit or developmental bilingual education. A late exit model is a bilingual program that serves a student identified as limited English, proficient in both English and Spanish, or another language, and transfer the students to English only instruction. A late exit model is a bilingual program that serves a student identified as limited English proficient in both English and Spanish, or another language, and transfer the student to English only instruction.
Since we all know what is bilingual education, let's talk about the bilingual education policy in the Philippines. Bilingual education policy in the Philippines is defined operationally as the separate use of Filipino and English as the media of instruction in specific subject areas, consistent with the 1987 constitutional mandate and the declared policy of the National Board of Education on bilingualism in the schools. The Department of Education, Culture and Sports promulgated its language policy. The policy was first implemented in 1974 when DEX issued Department Order Number 25, Section 19, Series 1974, titled Implementing Guidelines for the Policy on Bilingual Education. Bilingual education policy is a language policy in education under which two languages are used as mediums of instruction. The policy on bilingual education aims at the achievement of competence in both Filipino and English at the national level, through the teaching of both languages under use as media of instruction at all levels. The policy on bilingual education aims at the achievement of competence in both Filipino and English at the national level, through the teaching of both languages under use as media of instruction at all levels. The regional languages shall be used as auxiliary languages in grades 1 and 2. The aspiration of the Filipino nation is to have its citizens possess skills in Filipino to enable them to perform their functions and duties in order to meet the needs of the country and the community of nations.
The goals of the bilingual education policy shall be: first, enhance learning through two languages to achieve quality education as called for by the 1987 Constitution. Second, the propagation of Filipino as a language of literacy. Third, the development of Filipino as a linguistic symbol of national unity and identity. Fourth, the cultivation and elaboration of Filipino as a language of scholarly discourse, that is to say, its continuing intellectualization. Fifth, the maintenance of English as an international language for the Philippines and as a non-exclusive language of science and technology. BEP aims to achieve national competence in both Filipino and English through teaching both languages in schools, since their use as a media of instruction at all levels believed to improve quality education and for all Filipinos to be able to perform their functions and duties as Filipino citizens. This policy also aimed to produce students who are fluent in both Filipino and English, as this will benefit our country and its development in the long run. Because the more proficient they are in these languages, the better they will be able to perform in their duties, allowing our country to grow even faster.
Next, we have letter C. Filipino and English shall be used as media of instruction. They use allocated to specific subjects in the curriculum as indicated in the Department Order number 25 series of 1974. Next, let's move on to letter D. The regional languages shall be used as auxiliary media of instruction and as initial language for literacy where needed. Next one, Filipino and English shall be taught as language subjects in all levels to achieve the goals of bilingual competence. And letter F, since competence in the use of both Filipino and English is one of the goals of the bilingual education policy, continuing improvement in the teaching of both languages, their use as media of instruction, and the specification of their functions in Philippine schooling shall be the responsibility of the whole educational system.
Next policy is tertiary level institutions should lead in the continuing intellectualization of Filipino. The program of intellectualization, however, should also be pursued in both the elementary and secondary levels. This basically means that Filipino intellectualization shall begin at the elementary and secondary levels and continue through the tertiary level. Therefore, the entire educational system will be responsible for their utilization as instructional medium and their specification. And that is the reason why, even if we are English majors, we still have to take Filipino subjects whether we like it or not because it is according to this policy. Next policy is the Department of Education, Culture, and Sports shall cooperate with the National Language Commission, which, according to the 1987 Constitution, shall be tasked with further development and enrichment of Filipino. This policy highlights the idea that the Department of Education, Culture, and Sports will work with the National Language Commission since the department is the primarily responsible for the formulation, planning, implementation, and coordination of the policies, plans, programs, and projects in the areas of formal and non-formal education at all levels. While the National Language Commission shall undertake, coordinate, and promote researches for the development, propagation, and preservation of Filipino and other Philippine languages. Another policy is the Department of Education, Culture, and Sports shall provide the means by which the language policy can be implemented with the cooperation of government and non-government organization. And lastly, the department shall provide funds for implementing the policy in such areas as materials production, in service training, compensatory and enrichment program for non-Tagalogs, development of suitable and standardized Filipino for classroom use, and the development of appropriate evaluative instruments. Basically, it is the Department of Education, Culture, and Sports' responsibility to provide the means for implementation of the language in collaboration with the government and non-government organizations, as well as the funds are also supported by the department for the successful implementation of the policy.
Advantages of bilingual education. First is cultural awareness. So, since language is a vehicle to understand other culture, speaking a second language and experiencing other cultures may allow students to better understand and appreciate other cultures. Second, bilingualism makes it easier to learn a second language. So, since you have already a background with another language, learning another one is makes it easier. And third, it it gives an automatic adaptation to the second language. And the fourth one is beneficial for travel. So it can be quite beneficial for your travel since you can speak more than one language. It's easier for you to communicate to others with with knowing more other languages. So and the fifth one is it gives you a better career opportunities. Six, which leads to have a higher opportunity to study abroad. And the seventh one is a higher opportunity to work abroad. And eighth, it could also help you enhance your mental capacities. So, because language is the centers and the brain are so flexible, learning a second language can develop new areas in your mind and strengthen your brain's natural ability to focus.
Next advantage is learning languages can be fun. Learning new languages can also be enjoyable for certain people. While bilingual education may appear to some students to be a hardship, it may appear to others to be a passion. And for those students who enjoy learning languages, bilingual education may considerably increase their overall quality of life. 10. May just be the start. Bilingual education can be viewed as a gateway to far more potential for youngsters who appreciate learning new languages. For example, after learning one foreign language, many people consider it a pastime to study more, and some people learn numerous languages over time.
11th, it is easier to participate in exchange programs. Since many bilingual schools also offer school exchange programs with school in foreign countries, therefore by attending schools that offer bilingual education, chances are that you will also get to know a different culture at a rather young age, which may be greatly benefit you in later parts of your daily life. And also the opportunity to engage in those exchange programs may be another benefit of bilingual education. And 12th, with the personal development, since bilingual education can also greatly benefit the personal development of a child or children, for instance, due to the different cultural influence and higher level of acceptance towards other cultures that is implied by bilingual education, children will also learn much sooner that there are many ways to live and that our cultural norms should not necessarily be considered as a gold standard. Consequently, the overall personal development in schools with bilingual education may be fostered much more compared to attending in regular schools.
13th, students may be more willing to learn new things. Those who learn a second or third language from a young age are able to develop communication skills and a higher degree of literacy. Children who grow up in bilingual environments develop a keen awareness on how language works and have a stronger foundation for learning additional languages in the future. 14th, you may be able to work as a private language tutor. So, with a bilingual education, there is a big possibility that there will be a demand for private tutors. A child or student can definitely learn in class, but we cannot deny the fact that he or she can learn more when you teach exclusively, especially when learning languages.
15. It may boost confidence levels of kids. It is because they tend to be more creative and flexible that they are confident enough to use languages. Next. Lastly, we have 16. It is quite important in a globalized world because we can be globally competitive and we can cross borders without forgetting our own.
Apart from the important advantages of bilingual education, it also has disadvantages or shortcomings. First, it may be hard at the beginning. Not only do the students have to learn the foreign language, they also have to understand what's going on in terms of the actual subject material that should be taught. Therefore, the first months or years of bilingual education might be quite hard for the students, and some of them may not be willing to take this effort. Another disadvantage of bilingual education is that bilingual education may require more time to learn. It usually takes much longer to understand and to study a subject in a foreign language compared to learning the same things in a native language. Hence, many students may have to study hard to achieve their additional goals, and that can affect their time for other important things. Third one, less time for other important activities. If students have to learn for long hours every day, chances of that they would have less leisure time to spend with their friends or for other hobbies they like. In turn, the motivation for bilingual education may significantly suffer over time, and many students may no longer be willing to participate in this kind of education.
Fourth, students may have problems to understand certain topics. So learning another language is not easy. It needs quite a lot of time and determination. So in a Filipino classroom, there might be a student who cannot understand Tagalog, which is the language used for Filipino classes. Perhaps an American whose family migrated here in the Philippines. Given that she's a foreigner, she cannot understand well anything related to the Filipino subject. And we have the fifth disadvantage. May increase the stress level of students. The student will highly be put under pressure since she cannot only comprehend well enough about the lessons, she also cannot understand her classmates talking with each other. She might become anxious, which we all know might lead to stress. And the sixth one, not many schools offer this kind of education. Considering that the Philippines is facing lots of crises and problems, this type of education is deprived of attention from the executives. It is a very good step to improve and enhance the students' minds to be globally competitive. However, only a few schools offer bilingual education. And the seventh one, bilingual education can be costly. This is one of the inevitable disadvantages of bilingual education. Education alone is costly enough. Not all parents can afford to send their children to a school that offers this kind of education. Whereas there are other parents, if not mostly, who barely make ends meet.
Next is lack of qualified teachers is one of the disadvantages of bilingual education. Since teachers need to be skilled both in the subject as well as in the language they teach, chances are that there will not be too many teachers around who fulfill those high requirements, and school kids may therefore suffer from lack of education. Many people who have this skill set may rather want to work in a corporate world instead, since they are often able to earn more money. Hence, it might be quite hard to find enough suitable teachers for bilingual educations or bilingual schools, which may translate into a rather poor overall teaching quality in those schools. Next is higher administrative planning efforts. The overall planning and organizational efforts regarding bilingual education tend to be much higher compared to regular education. It is often quite difficult to schedule and to coordinate classes so that there is a healthy balance between teaching kids in their native and in a foreign language. Moreover, some teachers may not be able to teach in a foreign language in a proper manner, and due to that, it might be quite hard to figure out a working schedule, especially in case some teachers get sick and therefore unavailable for teaching purposes. Another disadvantages is children may burn out. Burnout is not an only issue in corporate world for adults. It can also be an issue for kids if they have to work too much in school. We all have some mental limits, and in case we stress ourselves too much on a regular basis, we chances are that we will suffer from serious mental problems like burnouts. Therefore, especially for kids who have rather limited mental capacities, bilingual education may not be way to go since they might suffer from additional stress since they also have to learn a foreign language in addition to the actual content. And lastly, quality of bilingual education greatly varies across schools. This also considered as one of the disadvantages of bilingual education since the quality of bilingual education might greatly vary across schools because there might be schools or some schools that may offer quite good education but other schools may be quite bad, and we should make sure to choose a bilingual school that offers a high quality education for the kids. And with that said, I hope you've learned something from us today. Let me end the discussion with a quote from Luis Fortuno. Bilingualism opens doors and opportunity to our children so they can shine and become successful in a labor market that is increasingly competitive and globalized. And once again,
Once again, this is the Group 1 reporters. I am ALENTON Raven.
I am NIÑO MARCNEIL H. ANDAN.
I am Rachel May Apostol.
I am BACARISAS JURENCE.
I am BAYNO ALIAH NIñA.
BLANCO MAILEEN Fee.
I am BRIONES BRIDGET.
and I am BUCOG JESSA. And once again, we are the Group 1, and thank you for watching.